I'm glad to be here, and as Casper said, when you talk about working for women, for all men who are married to a woman, I work for my wife. For all men who happen to have a woman assistant, I work for my assistant, Lorianne, and I obviously work for Anna because she said, Jim, I want you to be here for the DLDwomen event. And I said, okay, Anna, I'll be here. Real quickly, Anna, the video that you played at the start, 60 years history, I thought was brilliant. And it brought something back to me that I experienced 2 years ago in China. I was sitting down with the chief exec of one of the largest companies in China. And in 2009, China was celebrating their 60-year anniversary of modern China. And he said it this way. He said, this is how we think of the 60 years. He said, in 1949, Chairman Mao's time, socialism saved China. In 1979, we began instituting reforms, and capitalism improved China. He said in 1989, next door the Berlin Wall falls down, he said China turns around and saves socialism. And now in 2009 with the crisis, China saves capitalism. And so they see it as one big circle of 60 years. There's been an amazing amount of change. Like Casper, I spend most of my time traveling. I live in London, live in New York, about 270 days a year, 260 days a year. I'm neither of those two cities. I'm traveling somewhere. Look, we are living in very turbulent times, and what Steffi asked me to do is kind of move this up a level and talk a little bit about what's happening around the world. These are very turbulent times. They're times that both companies and countries and individuals will either come out ahead or behind. They'll win or lose. They're game-changing times in many ways. Personal view is the only way to come out ahead during times like this, there's a couple ways. You could be the kind of person to invent the next social media site, to invent the next iPad. I'm not like that. Or it all comes down to just great, on-the-ground execution, very prudent, very aggressive investment continuing. But I think to do the latter properly, you've really got to have the kind of mindset that each of the speakers here has been talking about. You've got to think like an entrepreneur. The depths of the crisis, what happened was fascinating. You think about the financial crisis, we serve clients all around the world. We have 150,000 people all around the world. We saw most companies hunker down, turn inward, focus on what they had to lose, not what they had to gain, give up too often some of the progress they had made, even though it was slight, around gender and diversity, and really focus on just kind of settling in. We found the most entrepreneurial companies thinking differently. We did a survey of hundreds and hundreds of both big, mature multinationals and more entrepreneurial businesses. Depths of the crisis, less than 1 in 20 of the biggest companies in the world were actively seeking opportunities. Over 2/3 of the entrepreneurs were saying, now's the time to go do something. We may be weak, our competitors are weaker. We might have new markets we go into, now's the time. And so one of the things that is so important is to have the right mindset of an entrepreneur. It's one of the reasons at Ernst & Young we celebrate entrepreneurship all around the world, and especially winning women entrepreneurs. It's something we are really, really focusing on heavily. But mindset only gets you so far if you don't have a real good view of the landscape out there, what's really happening. Yes, we're seeing recovery around the world. Yes, it's in different speeds around the world. Of course, there are risks to the recovery. Read about Greece, read about wherever. But the biggest trends are not changing. The biggest trends around the shift in capital from west to east, north to south, developed to emerging, that's not going to change. And the big trend that this conference is all about, the demographic shift, is not going to change. It is so important, issues not just around gender, but around ethnicity, nationality, religion, sexual orientation, generational differences, age, the entire issues of demography are incredibly, incredibly important. If you step back, I saw some stats recently that shocked even me, and I spend a lot of time on demographics. When I'm not leading Ernst & Young, I'm the chair of the Catalyst organization that did a lot of the research that was talked about up here. So issues of gender are front and center, not just for me personally, but for Ernst & Young. But I saw some demographic stats that even scared me. What it showed is that by 2020, the average age of the populations in the US and China would be about the same, 36 or 37 years old. No big surprise there. The average age of the populations in Western Europe and Japan will be about the same in 2020 also, 46 or 47 years old, 10 full years older. The average age of populations in the Middle East and India and Africa will be about the same then too, 26 or 27 years old. So a full generation younger than Japan and Western Europe. So issues of age are going to have a huge impact on the world as well. What does that mean to buying patterns, consumer spending? What does it mean to ability of societies to invest in retirement commitments? What does it mean to immigration policy? Incredibly important stuff. One of the most important is what Irene was talking about, which is the emergence of women as an incredibly vital force in the world. I think it was Booz Allen did a study a while back that called women the third billion. You think about China as a billion, you think about India as a billion people. They talk about women middle market consumers as the third billion people and the buying power that comes from that. At the end of the day, the way we think about things at Ernst & Young is really all driven by both the capital shifts I mentioned and the demographic shifts I mentioned. Because at the end of the day, we're all about people. We don't have hard assets. We don't have patents. We are only as good as the number of people we can attract and their individual skills on the one hand. And on the other hand, we're only as good as the way we can bring these people together into teams and the effectiveness with which they work in teams. Because one of the things that is fundamentally true, and we've got lots and lots of measures and stats and performance and accountability and programmatic things all around diversity, all around the mix of our people. And we have just as many things around inclusion, making the mix of our people work. Because at the end of the day, one thing is clear, that our people in the future will work on much more diverse teams than they have in the past. The teams will be more diverse. That's a given. The research that Irene didn't talk about is that what history has shown is that truly diverse teams are rarely middle of the road in their business performance. They are either off the charts great or they absolutely suck. And it all comes down to how effective the culture is in an organization. It all comes down to how effective the team is in bringing all the different perspectives that are sitting around the table onto the table, or whether the leader of the team, too frequently in the past, a white guy like me, keeps ideas quiet. And so to me, one of the real richness that is going to be so important for success in the future is not just all of the things that organizations do to ensure that women are hired in great numbers, promoted in great numbers, retained in great numbers, rise to the very top of businesses all around the world, and that Ernst & Young really leads in terms of each of the cultures in which we operate. That's what's vitally important, not that what's happening in one country is replicated in another, but that we be out in front, leading in every culture in which we do business. What's just as important is making all of the rich mix work so we have a real inclusive leadership within Ernst & Young. I'll close by telling you a quick story that happened to me just a little over a year ago when I was on a panel on economic growth in Saudi Arabia. I don't know how many of you women have been to Saudi Arabia. I doubt very many of you. But for those of you who haven't, Saudi is obviously a kingdom that has very different perspectives around women and women's rights. I'm on this panel with 4 other men with a male moderator. If you picture it, 600 people plus in the audience, about 3 women, floor-to-ceiling curtain, 30 feet high, 150 women behind the curtain, literally no line of sight of the stage. They're watching on a TV monitor. And we're about 5 minutes from completion time, and you hear a voice from behind the curtain. And this woman says to the panel, "I'd like to ask a question." She says, "I'd like to ask whether you think the way Saudi Arabia treats women will be a risk factor to our economic growth." The whole topic was economic growth in the kingdom. And so if you picture this, I'm sitting in my chair, I'm on the far end, I look down, and I literally see 5 guys looking at their shoes. They are flat on the ground. I'm like, oh God. And so I said, "I'll take this." And so I said, it's a wonderful question. And I explained our commitment at Ernst & Young. I explained what I do at Catalyst and other things. And I said, I will shock you because I actually think that with what is going to happen here, this will end up furthering your economic growth because the culture in Saudi Arabia will change. It is already changing. I come here a lot, and you could feel the desire of real senior leaders from King Abdullah on down to change the culture. It's going to happen in slow steps and then in fast steps, faster than you think. And as it changes, the economic empowerment of women will further the growth in Saudi. I'm ready to get off the stage. I'm worried to myself that I'm going to get thrown in jail. I'm worried I'm going to be excommunicated. I get off. The head of the organizing committee for this conference pulls me to the side and says, "Jim, thank you. We needed to hear that." Then I put on my BlackBerry, and I'm getting messages from one of our most senior vice chairs in the firm, a woman who was somewhere God knows where in the world. She's getting messages from behind the curtain saying, "Your boss just took on the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and said, 'Damn it, change his culture.'" And hooray. And so we all need to push, and we need to lead in each of our own cultures. I think if you haven't seen it, read today's Herald Tribune. There is an in-depth story about issues of gender here in Germany. Work on it. We'll all work on it together. God bless you. Thanks for having me here.
Thank you.